At 4:00 a.m., when most of Burkina Faso was still asleep, silence was suddenly broken on the border with Togo. A convoy of trucks moved slowly through the night, 57 in total, rolling at an hour when no one should have been there. For the border guards, it was an unusual sight. For President Ibrahim Traoré, it was a call to action that could decide the fate of a nation. What looked at first like a routine patrol quickly became the discovery of a lifetime 57 trucks, each one packed with hidden weapons, AK-47s, M16s, rocket launchers, and anti-aircraft missiles. It was not aid. It was not farming equipment. It was an arsenal designed to tear a country apart. And the question that stunned the nation and the world was simple. Who was behind this for the people of Burkina Faso? The answer was more than curiosity. It was survival. If these weapons had reached their final destination, the nation could have been dragged into chaos, another Libya, another Syria, another endless war. But in that dark moment, the leadership of Ibrahim Traoré made all the difference. He moved swiftly personally, directing special forces to intercept, to seize, and to uncover the truth. This is not just a story about weapons on the border. This is the story of a continent waking up, of a leader refusing to bow, and of an Africa that refuses to be silenced. But it also raises a haunting question. If 57 trucks were stopped, how many more are still on the road? And so we ask, do you believe President Traoré's stand is enough to protect his people, or is this only the beginning of a much larger battle for Africa's future? Please share this story if you feel that you are among the first to witness history being written. And subscribe if you believe that the truth is more important than the headlines. Together, let us uncover what the world does not want us to see. The events of August 16, 2025 began like any other quiet night in the Canary region, a stretch of land near Burkina Faso's border with Togo. But what unfolded before dawn would become one of the most important discoveries in modern African history. Border Commander Captain Moussa Kabore had been conducting routine surveillance when something caught his attention. A long convoy of trucks moved deliberately under the cover of darkness. Normally, this road lay silent at that hour. The size of the convoy and its unusual timing immediately raised red flags. Without hesitation, Kabore alerted senior officials. When President Ibrahim Traoré was briefed, he did not dismiss it as mere smuggling. His instincts told him something far more sinister was in motion. He called General Ibrahim Zerbo, head of the Special Forces, and gave a clear, calm order: intercept that convoy. Be cautious, this could be bigger than we think. What followed was a meticulously coordinated operation. Special Forces units moved swiftly, setting up roadblocks, while drones and helicopters tracked the convoy from above. The order was simple: stop every truck, capture the drivers alive, and secure whatever was inside. At exactly 4:00 a.m., the trap was sprung. The road ahead was blocked as soldiers surrounded the convoy. Some drivers attempted to flee, but within minutes all 57 trucks were under military control. No shots were fired, but the tension in the air was palpable. Everyone knew that what they were about to find could change the course of the country. When the soldiers opened the first truck, what they saw left them stunned. Beneath sacks and crates disguised as aid supplies lay rows of military rifles, ammunition belts, and rocket launchers. One truck after another revealed the same secret: a rolling arsenal. Captain Kabore immediately called the president. His words were sharp, almost trembling. "Mr. President, you won't believe this. These trucks are packed with enough weapons to equip an entire army." The full inventory was overwhelming: 25,000 AK-47s, 10,000 M16 rifles, 13 million rounds of ammunition, 70,000 grenades, 2,500 rocket launchers, 400 anti-aircraft missiles, 50 tons of explosives. In total, the cash was valued at over $700 million. For a nation like Burkina Faso struggling to rebuild and secure its sovereignty, this was not just a discovery. It was a revelation of a looming catastrophe. Inside the National Security Council, Defense Minister General Sadu was visibly shaken. With this firepower, you could invade an entire country. Interior Minister Hussein Traore added grimly, if these weapons had reached their destination, Burkina Faso would be in chaos by now. This was designed for a coup, or worse, a long insurgency. President Traoré stood looking around the room. His voice was steady but fierce. This is not random. This is part of a much larger plan. But we have stopped it. We will find out who is behind this, and we will not let Burkina Faso fall. At that moment, the story shifted. What began as a suspicious convoy had now become undeniable evidence of an orchestrated attempt to destabilize the nation. The weapons weren't just meant for the black market, they were meant to ignite war inside Burkina Faso. The decision was clear. The president ordered a full-scale investigation, track the origins of the weapons, interrogate every driver, and most importantly, follow the money. Because behind 57 trucks of weapons was not just a crime syndicate, it was a conspiracy that reached far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. This was no ordinary night. It was the night Burkina Faso looked into the abyss and chose to stand firm. When dawn broke on the second day of the investigation, the truth behind the 57 seized trucks began to unravel, and with it, the scale of the conspiracy. At first, many of the captured drivers appeared genuinely confused. Most swore they thought they were transporting agricultural machinery. But after hours of questioning, one name surfaced: Marc-Antoine Zongo, the first driver to break under pressure. His voice trembled as he confessed, "They told us we were hauling machine parts. We were ordered to deliver them to a warehouse in Togo. From there, someone else would ship them overseas." Yet investigators quickly realized the deception was deeper. Each truck had been dispatched separately from different locations across the region, using back roads and secondary routes. They only merged into a convoy right before reaching the border, a calculated tactic to avoid suspicion. This was not the work of amateurs. It was a coordinated military operation disguised as commerce. By the end of the day, Burkina Faso's intelligence services delivered another shock. Despite many serial numbers being filed off, forensic experts traced weapons back to multiple origins, leftovers from Libya's civil war rifles used in Yemen, and even brand new arms directly from European factories. The picture was clear: someone had invested staggering sums to destabilize Burkina Faso. The total arsenal, worth over $700 million, wasn't just for bandits or smugglers. It was enough to arm tens of thousands of fighters. President Ibrahim Traoré convened the National Security Council and laid out the discovery in blunt terms. This is not smuggling. This is preparation for war. Someone is funding an operation to topple our government. The turning point came when François Bongo, a well-connected businessman and outspoken critic of the administration, cracked under interrogation. Shaking, his words spilled out like a thunderclap. This wasn't about smuggling. It was an operation called Restore Democracy. Foreign powers promised us support. The goal was clear: to overthrow President Traoré and replace him with a government that answers to Paris and Washington. The room fell into silence as Bongo revealed more. Meetings had been held in Accra and Abidjan, with instructions passed down from foreign embassies. The $700 million cash was only phase one. The plan was chilling in its precision: stage terrorist attacks to create panic, mobilize opposition groups in the chaos, use traitors inside the army to launch a coup. It was a script Africa had seen before in Libya, Syria, Yemen, and now Burkina Faso was next on the list. President Traoré decided the world must see the truth with their own eyes. He called for a nationally televised press conference unlike any other. Behind him, towering piles of confiscated rifles, rocket launchers, and grenades stunned viewers at home and abroad. Holding a folder of classified documents, Traoré declared, "My fellow Burkinabé, 3 days ago, we intercepted the largest weapons smuggling operation in our history." But this was no ordinary crime. This was an organized attempt to destroy our country from within. The documents here prove it: millions of dollars foreign involvement and a detailed plan to plunge us into chaos. When journalists pressed him, Traoré was firm to CNN. Some of these weapons were manufactured in NATO countries. To BBC, 17 individuals have already been arrested, including former ministers and generals. The truth is coming out. To Al Jazeera, this is not just an attack on Burkina Faso. This is an attack on all of Africa. Similar plots are unfolding in Mali, Niger, and Guinea. Then came the final blow. On live television, the confession of François Bongo was played in full. With tears running down his face, he admitted, "They told us we were bringing democracy. But what we would have brought was the destruction of our own country. I was wrong. I betrayed my people. I am sorry." The effect was electric. Across Burkina Faso, people poured into the streets in anger and relief: anger at the betrayal, and relief that the plot had been stopped just in time. Women wept. Men clenched their fists in solidarity. Young people shouted Traoré's name as a chant of defiance. For the international community, the press conference was a bombshell. Western governments were quick to deny involvement, but the evidence shown on screen was impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, across Africa, leaders and citizens alike began to whisper the same thought. Burkina Faso had just exposed the hidden hand behind Africa's instability. This was no longer just about 57 trucks. It was about a people realizing that their sovereignty had been targeted and their leader had stood firm in the storm. The revelations of Operation Restored Democracy sent shockwaves through Burkina Faso's political and civil life. What had begun as a quiet patrol at the border now unfolded into the largest domestic crackdown in decades. Within 48 hours of the initial seizure, President Ibrahim Traoré ordered a sweeping campaign in the capital Ouagadougou. The mission was codenamed Operation Storm. At dawn, security forces carried out 23 simultaneous raids across the city. The results were staggering: weapons caches discovered in 17 warehouses, along with documents, bank ledgers, encrypted phones, and lists of collaborators. The arrests stunned the nation. Among those detained were former ministers, retired generals, wealthy businessmen, and even individuals carrying diplomatic passports. Many of them had long been vocal opponents of the government, but few imagined they would be caught red-handed in a plot of this scale. When news broke that 3 French citizens, 2 British nationals, an American, and 2 Israelis were among those captured, the story turned into an international scandal. Inside Burkina Faso, the political class trembled. Opposition parties scrambled to distance themselves while ordinary citizens poured into the streets demanding justice. Outside the main courthouse, thousands gathered chanting "No betrayal." No coup mothers carried placards reading, "You will not sell our children's future." For a nation that had endured decades of instability, this was a breaking point. The courtroom scenes were unforgettable. Packed with citizens, journalists, and families of soldiers, the trials began almost immediately. The suspects, once powerful and untouchable, now stood in chains. Some wept openly, others tried to shield their faces, and a few begged for forgiveness. The charges were grave treason, terrorism, weapons trafficking, and attempted overthrow of the state. Prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence: bank transfers, audio recordings, surveillance footage, and confessions. Even defense lawyers struggled to mount arguments. But it wasn't only about punishment. President Traoré knew that national healing required more than arrests. It required transformation. In a historic public address at Independence Square, he announced a symbolic decision: the seized weapons would not rot in warehouses, they would be melted down and repurposed. Tools of death, he declared, will become tools of life. The symbolism was powerful. Before tens of thousands of citizens, a massive cauldron was rolled onto the stage. In full view of the nation, soldiers dropped the first assault rifle into the fire. As the metal melted, it was poured into a mold. Moments later, President Traoré lifted a newly cast school bell and rang it. "Every morning, when our children hear this bell, they will be hearing the sound of peace," he proclaimed. The crowd erupted. Women ululated in joy. Elderly men cried. Young people shouted, "Traoré, Traoré." The event was broadcast live, and images of rifles turning into school bells and hospital plaques went viral across Africa. It was a vision of redemption, taking the very instruments meant to destroy the nation and transforming them into symbols of hope. On the policy front, the government moved quickly. Proceeds from scrap metal sales were allocated to fund 100 new schools, 50 health clinics, and 1,000 kilometers of irrigation canals. By tying the failed coup directly to projects of development, Traoré turned crisis into opportunity. Yet, the political consequences were no less dramatic. Opposition figures were discredited, foreign embassies were placed under tighter scrutiny, and the call for African unity against foreign meddling grew louder. In villages and towns, people began referring to August 16th not as the day Burkina Faso almost fell, but as the day it was reborn. From betrayal emerged unity. From fear, resilience. And from an arsenal meant for war came the foundations of peace. The fallout from the 57-truck seizure did not stop at Burkina Faso's borders. Within days, the shockwaves reached Washington, Paris, London, and beyond. Western governments were the first to react. France and the United States denied any involvement, but their responses were defensive and unusually sharp. Diplomats demanded the release of foreign nationals arrested in Ouagadougou, calling their detention a violation of international norms. Yet, the images shown on Burkinabe television, men carrying diplomatic passports who were not accredited diplomats, undermined those claims. The world saw what Traoré called agents of chaos, hiding under the cloak of diplomacy. In Washington, officials worried about more than optics. For years, the United States had portrayed itself as a partner in African security. Now, evidence suggesting Western fingerprints on an attempted coup raised uncomfortable questions. Could America still claim to support democracy in Africa while being accused of fueling instability? The White House remained cautious, issuing only carefully worded statements about monitoring the situation closely. Europe, meanwhile, appeared divided. Some EU officials echoed France pressing for the release of their citizens. Others, particularly from Eastern Europe, were more restrained, wary of being linked to a conspiracy that clearly violated Burkina Faso's sovereignty. But as the West scrambled, non-Western powers seized the moment. Russia praised Burkina Faso's vigilance, declaring that every nation had the right to defend itself from foreign subversion. China went further, offering to provide new security equipment and intelligence-sharing support, framing it as part of a broader partnership with Africa. Turkey condemned arms smuggling as a crime against humanity and pledged solidarity. Iran denounced imperialist plots and called Traoré's stand an inspiration for the oppressed. Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro compared Traoré to Simón Bolívar, declaring him a hero of anti-imperialist struggle. The African Union faced pressure as well. Civil society groups across the continent demanded the AU not only investigate, but also create stronger mechanisms to prevent foreign-backed coups. In Mali, Niger, and Guinea, nations already aligned with Burkina Faso in the alliance of Sahel states, AES leaders expressed open support, warning that similar operations were likely planned against them. For ordinary Africans, the message resonated even more deeply. Social media lit up with the slogan, "Africa will not kneel." From Lagos to Johannesburg, citizens shared footage of Traoré's press conference and the iconic image of the rifle being melted into a school bell. The American media, however, painted a different picture. Outlets like CNN and the New York Times questioned the authenticity of the evidence, suggesting the Burkinabe government was exaggerating to consolidate power. But these narratives rang hollow for many Africans who saw a familiar pattern of Western denial. In the end, the global reaction revealed a deeper truth: the world was splitting into two camps. One camp, largely in the West, struggled to defend its image, while the other, stretching from Moscow to Caracas, embraced Burkina Faso as a symbol of resistance. For the United States in particular, the incident posed a troubling dilemma. If Washington was indeed linked, even indirectly, its credibility in Africa could collapse for a generation. If it wasn't, the mere perception of complicity was damaging enough. Either way, President Ibrahim Traoré had shifted the conversation. He had exposed the hidden hand in Africa's turmoil and forced the world to choose sides. The story of the 57 trucks of weapons did not end with their seizure, nor with the televised confessions. It lives on as both a warning and a call to vigilance. Burkina Faso may have stopped one plot, but the documents recovered proved this was never just about a single nation. Plans had been drawn up for Mali, Niger, and Guinea, and even beyond. The scheme was continental. The threat was global. President Ibrahim Traoré stood before his people and told them plainly, "They divided our ministries before toppling our government. They forgot one thing: this land belongs to the people, not to them." His words carried more than national pride. They carried a universal truth. Sovereignty is not a gift handed down by empires. It is something earned, defended, and renewed every day. The symbolism of transforming rifles into school bells was more than political theater. It was a message to future generations. Children in Burkina Faso will grow up hearing the sound of a bell forged from a weapon once meant to kill them. That bell is not just a tool for learning. It is a daily reminder of survival, resilience, and dignity. But the danger has not passed. History shows us that when one attempt fails, another will come. The same forces that toppled Libya, that bled Syria, that drowned Yemen in endless war, those forces have not disappeared. They adapt, they wait, and they search for new openings. For Africa, this means one thing: unity is no longer optional, it is essential. As Traoré warned, this is not just an attack on Burkina Faso. This is an attack on all of Africa. The choice for the continent is clear: stand together or fall separately. For the United States and the West, the message is equally sobering. Decades of interference, covert plots, and double standards have eroded trust. If Washington and Paris continue to act as if Africa is their chessboard, they may find that the board itself has flipped. And so, we are left with questions that demand answers. Do you think that President Ibrahim Traoré's national reform strategies are truly effective? Yet can Africa trust his leadership, or should someone else rise to carry the torch forward? And most of all, are we ready to believe that the age of African submission is over? If you believe this story matters, share it. Let your friends and family know that Africa is no longer silent. Please subscribe if you believe that truth is more important than the headlines and that stories like this deserve to be heard worldwide. Because the struggle is not over, it has only just begun. And whether you live in Ouagadougou, New York or Johannesburg, the lesson is the same: sovereignty is fragile and freedom is never free.